This is the 8BitDo all-button arcade controller. And here's the controller already set up. It comes in this nice looking box here. It works on the Switch and Windows. There's also an Xbox version of this controller as well. In the box, you'll find a short USB-A to USB-C cable. Looks like it's about 3 feet long. And you'll also find 4 cap locks here. I've already installed 2 of them down here. This way they're flushed against the surface, so you won't accidentally press them. These 2 up here are still working for me. It's awesome that 8BitDo actually thought of this. Let's go over the build quality of this guy. For only being $90, this has amazing build quality. Check this out. So the surface here is actually glass. And if you flip it around, we have a non-slip silicone pad, and we have the dongle tucked in here, so if you want to play it wirelessly. The only thing on this guy that feels like it's not high quality are the buttons themselves. The plastic on here feels kind of cheap, but other than that, for the price, it's really well built. Just so you have a size comparison, so this guy is tiny compared to the hitbox. Also, the hitbox is a lot longer as well. I do wish that this is just like maybe an inch longer on each side, because as of right now, it's pretty uncomfortable for me to put on my lap. In terms of the switches, these are clicky switches. You can actually hear and feel when the switch activates. You know, personally, I don't like that, to be honest with you. And normally I like clicky switches, but on an arcade stick, I prefer my switches to be linear, kind of like the hitbox here. You can go from button to button a lot quicker, but it's really not a big deal. You'll get used to it over time. Now, what's cool is you can take the cap off. You can see the switch here. You see there are 2 of these things that are sticking out. Make sure they line up with these nubs right here. If you go the other way, right, and line these up vertically into these holes here, there we go. Now it actually becomes flush and it doesn't spring up. This is to lock the button. So I guess this is useful if you don't use these extra buttons here and you want them to be flush. I guess that's what you can do. This thing has a lot of customization. I like that a lot. For 3D fighters or games that doesn't require a lot of motion inputs, then this controller is just fantastic. Just like on the hitbox, you have access to all buttons, all at your fingertips all at once. And that's what makes this so great, right? You don't have to move your hand around like on the controller. For example, on a regular controller, right? Your thumb has to lift up and move between buttons. If you want to press 2 buttons at once, it's a little awkward, or you can play claw, but this position gets pretty uncomfortable. But on a controller like this, your hands are rested on the controller very naturally. If I want to press these 2 buttons at once, look how quick that is. Or if I want to roll, very easy. And the directional buttons, since they are separated, you have a lot more control over it. On the D-pad, you kind of have to know the angle to press diagonals accurately. On here, if I want to press down back, I know exactly where to press, right? So these 2 buttons at once. Now the tricky thing is when you play on one of these, is that the up button is actually down here. So you have to rewire your brain to think of this as a jump button. When I first started using the hitbox, it took me months to get used to this. So for example, in menu navigations, I sometimes get confused. Now the good news is this. These extra buttons, particularly this one right here, right, is placed right above the down button. So what I do here is I program this guy to up. So that way, when I navigate menu, I don't get confused anymore. Look at that. With the addition of this programmable button right here, it solves a lot of problems for me. As useful as these beam buttons are, and they look cool too, right? And I understand why it's designed this way because the switch is this little thing right in the center, right? So when you press it on the side, it's off-centered. So if you're going to use the beam buttons, make sure you press it in the center. Now something like a round button here, right? It doesn't matter where you press. Personally, instead of these bean shapes, I would have preferred like maybe a square shape or another round button. Let me show you an example of why playing on a leverless like this is super useful, right? So for example, I want to do backdash. What I need to do is hold back and tap down. On the regular controller, you cannot do that, right? You cannot use one thumb to press back and at the same time hold down. You have to lift up the other finger and do this, right? But on something like this, that's totally possible. Look at that. Look how easy that is. To make it even easier for myself, I programmed this extra button to down. All I need to do is hold back and I do this. It's a lot faster. So in terms of cardinal directions, there's no competing with something like this, with a design like this. These buttons and switches feel super responsive. In terms of motion inputs, this controller is also good for it. Now you wouldn't think it because the directions are separated, right? But Street Fighter is actually pretty forgiving when it comes to motion inputs. There's a lot of shortcuts that you can use to accomplish certain motions. Quarter circles, Z motion, look how fast that is. It's great. Now with 360s, there's a trick. You just slide it, press up, and then punch. Look how easy that is. And it works the same way on both sides. However, I'm not able to do 720s on this controller. So what you're supposed to do is slide it, press up, and then slide back, and then press punch. Yeah, I'm only able to get that. Maybe I'm doing something wrong here. I guess now is a good time to talk about macros, because I programmed the 720 onto this button right here. I press this button right here and take a look. But it doesn't work for me, unfortunately. Yep, it doesn't work. You may be thinking, well, that's too bad, because if it has macros, you may not be able to use this in tournaments or something. There's a switch here. Just turn it to lock, and that disables all of these buttons, including macros. So as much as I like the ability to take these caps out, so there has to be an empty space around the button for you to lift this up, and as a result of that, the edge here is pretty tall. Now if you look at the hitbox here, do you notice any difference? Around the button, there's this ring, and it's tapered into the button. So that way, when you do sliding actions like this, it's very smooth, right? But on the 8BitDo controller, when you slide it, you kind of run against the edge here, right? So it's not as smooth. It's doable, but you have to kind of fight against it. What I would have done is to make the edges on these caps a lot more rounder. So that way you can slide your finger on here a lot easier. Let's talk about the app. There's a PC app. It's called 8BitDo Ultimate Software V2. Here you can update the firmware. I have the newest version. And then you can also customize it as well. Go to Profile. I have a profile for Street Fighter 6 and one for DOA 6. And to switch between the profiles, all you gotta do is press this button right here, the start button. Under mapping, you can remap everything here, including these menu buttons, but not these. And then you can also program macros as well. You can create a new one, 360 for this guy. and you have a choice here to use uniform interval time 30 milliseconds. I'll show you what that means. So if you have this selected, press start. So I'm gonna go bam, 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 stop, and every one of these inputs is gonna activate at a 30 millisecond interval. If you don't want to use that, you can uncheck it, and now it plays it in real time. I was really slow with it, so it's going to be super slow. This is not going to be helpful. So if you're going to use macros, it's probably pretty useful to check this. This makes recording it a lot easier, and the output is going to be a lot more consistent. And we're going to just go ahead and save it. Now let's select this key and then activate it. Also, you have SOCD options too. This is awesome. Typically, it's pre-programmed into the controller, but look at this. You get to choose. If you don't know what this is, essentially when you press two buttons at once, it's going to do a certain thing. Well, it's helpful when you're trying to do shortcuts with your inputs. So for example, if you choose absolute up priority and you play a charged character, right? So you're going to be pressing down back a lot and you don't want to let it go, but you need to jump really quickly. So you just press up while the down button is still held down and your character is going to jump. So that's one scenario that's helpful. So the app itself is pretty basic, but it works really well. In terms of input lag, unfortunately I don't have that information for you. It's not on Game Paddler and I can't find polling rate or input lag information anywhere. So from my experience playing it wired, it's pretty responsive. I have no problem with it, and I'm going to assume that playing it on the dongle is going to be slower than wired, and Bluetooth is even slower than this. So overall, what do I think of the controller? I actually like it a lot. In some ways, it's actually better than the Hitbox. I really like the fact that there are these additional buttons, and having an extra button up here so I can program it to up, make my brain work a lot easier. In terms of the things that I would change, is I would just make this just like an inch wider on each side so I can put it on my lap a little easier, and make these buttons a little more rounded on the edges. That would be perfect. I really love the size, the weight, and the thinness of this guy. It's very portable. If you're someone who is curious about leverless controllers, this is the first great option for you. Alright, that's going to be it for me. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and found it to be helpful. If you did, give it a like, subscribe for more, and take care now.